Peter, good morning to you. Merry Christmas Eve, colleague. Such a hard worker. There you are, making sure that we stay up to date with what's happening in terms of breaking news. But speaking of which, we know that a lot has been happening just in terms of that contact tracing and quarantining in the country being officially stopped.
Yeah. This is an interesting development from the health department. We woke up to their statement from them saying, look, they feel like the proportion of people with immunity is high. That's why they decided to stop this contact tracing. And containment strategies are no longer viable, according to the statement they issued this morning. So it's going to be interesting because in terms of how this will be implemented, you still have those other isolation period of 10 days remaining in place for those who are infected, and a negative test will no longer be required for one to return back to work, which for me it's quite a huge development. Looking at the amount of money that people were spending on COVID tests, the last few days there have been interesting developments within the department, and I think it's encouraging that they are stepping up. Whenever there's a change, they implement, and if it's not working, then they can revise it. But for now, I think this is a good development.
Yeah, it is, and I think especially as far as the costs are concerned, Peter, we're looking at that photo there. It's from eNCA.com, by the way, if you want to get more on the story that Peter's talking about, head over to eNCA.com, because you've got to get tested for COVID.
You do.
Then you find out that you're positive. Then 10 days later, you've got to pay to get a negative test. This is starting to get very, very, very expensive for people who don't always have a lot of money because of COVID as well. Okay, so that story, Health Department revising COVID-19 quarantining. Yeah, go ahead, Peter. Go ahead.
And by the way, interestingly, this comes at the back of the Competition Commission yesterday, announcing that the three major testing companies are actually reducing the cost of the PCR test. It won't cost you more than 150 Rand, which is including VAT, which is also another interesting development that we reported on. It was a breaking news story on eNCA yesterday in the afternoon.
Yeah, and we've got that breaking news. We've got that breaking news bottom of your screen now about this trace testing as well. But a lot of the criticism before we move to the Star newspaper is if the Competition Commission hadn't come in, Toombs and Peter, would they have reduced their prices on their own? So it seems like they're doing a good thing, but they're getting a lot of flack as well, that if they weren't told by the Competition Commission to drop it, would they have done it? Okay, we need to move on to the Star. We could talk about eNCA.com all day, but that might be a bit unfair. The Star newspaper, firing of...
I can't complain.
No, I'm sure you can't. Firing of sick rugby fan was fair. It's a retail giant claiming that he was dishonest when he said he was ill, but actually attended a sports event. And this is the problem. We can't have people lying about what's happening with their health at the moment.
Yeah, it's interesting. You see this all the time with employees reporting sick, and suddenly you're out shopping. There's WhatsApp status updates, and you're like, what happened to being at work? What happened to being honest? The ruling here by the CCMA is quite scathing, actually. The fact that they're saying you felt better in the afternoon, you should have actually reported for duty. So it's a way of dealing with dishonest employees, and I actually side with the CCMA on this one because productivity is very low right now in SA, and if you have someone who's meant to report for duty and then they go off to go and attend a rugby game, then you can't trust that person. You breaking that trust relationship between you and the employer. I'm siding with the CCMA on this one.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to move on to the Witness newspaper. We're going through, we're in the middle of a festive season, it's supposed to be a cheerful time, but it seems for some, Peter, is not. Lives being uprooted there, and families being left without shelter, businesses suspended trading after a freak storm. This according to the Witness newspaper.
Yeah, it's a terrible story, especially around Christmas time. This story, I think, broke a day or two ago where people were taking to social media reporting about the freak storm in Pietermaritzburg. And there's a guy who's quoted here, Sboniso Ngobo, who said he had to use his last money to book a lodge for his family. Otherwise, they would have nowhere to go. It's quite terrible, and you see this happening over and over again in KZN around Christmas time. I don't know if there's a way that this can be prevented in a way, but you see this happening regularly. It's quite concerning, especially around this time.
And the KZN Health, KZN MEC for Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs, also just warning people in KZN, especially with all this weather on the go at the moment, the heavy rain, etc. Just be careful when crossing flooded areas like bridges, low-lying housing areas as well. Before we move on, we're going to end off with the Herald front page photo. But before we do that, this is terrible news for you, I, and Peter.
You know.
And in fact, everybody that enjoys a Sunday roast, a Christmas baked potato, oven potatoes. Peter, we are going into a crunch time for chip lovers. Tell me it's not true. Tell me it's not true that we have a shortage of chips.
We reported on this, on the shortage of potatoes. I mean, it's terrible, especially for those who love the snacks.
We've been through COVID-19. Don't take away our chips.
No, this has to be the peak.
This is it now.
This is the peak.
This is where we walk out.
Yeah.
We've had COVID-19. It's been a tough 2 years. Now our chips are gone. This is rubbish. All right, let's head over to... sorry, kids. Let's go to the Herald quickly. But, Peter, we're just going to talk about the front photo. Peter Motloutsi, thank you very much. eNCA duty editor taking us through eNCA.com, the breaking news, bottom of your screen. But that, I think, is probably the epitome of most Christmas mornings. You've got the little sister being pushed out the way. He wants his gift. Santa's fallen over. Too much milk and cookies.
Right? And he's posing for the camera while doing it. I mean, it has to be that time, right, where kids are just waiting to open up their Christmas gifts. So the Herald doing a good job there, just giving us a glimpse of what most families are going through, I suppose, at this time, or even tomorrow morning when they open up their Christmas gift. That's the Herald newspaper.